Car dealers across America are facing an unprecedented crisis of their own making. After years of markups, hidden fees, and predatory sales tactics, the bill has finally come due, and it's far larger than they ever imagined. While most consumers are still recovering from sticker shock and inflated payments, something much bigger is happening behind the scenes that dealerships don't want you to know about. Families who walked into showrooms expecting fairness were hit with markups, surprise add-ons, and hidden fees. Now they're walking out for good, and the loyalty dealers relied on for decades is collapsing overnight. The numbers are staggering. 34% of new car buyers paid more than manufacturers' suggested retail price during the pandemic-era shortage. But the aftermath? That's where the real story begins. What dealerships never anticipated was how deeply this breach of trust would cut and how permanent the damage would become. Angry customers aren't just buying elsewhere, they're abandoning dealership service departments, warning friends and family to stay away, and even filing lawsuits that are resulting in multi-million-dollar settlements. Wall Street investors are pulling back. Manufacturers are publicly scolding their own dealers, and regulators are closing in with new rules that carry penalties of $50,000 per violation. For decades, car dealers operated with near total control of the buying process. Shoppers expected some negotiation, but the sticker price was always the ceiling, not the floor. That unwritten rule collapsed during the pandemic when supply chain issues gave dealers unprecedented leverage, and they used it to squeeze every possible dollar from desperate buyers. The consequences of that greed are now reverberating through the entire industry in ways nobody predicted. A staggering 27% of overcharged customers say they will never purchase that brand again. Another 31% are actively warning friends and relatives to avoid specific dealerships. Even more alarming for retailers, 29% have pledged never to return for service, cutting off the steady revenue stream dealers depend on to survive between sales. But that's just the beginning of a much larger collapse that's reshaping how cars will be bought and sold for generations to come. In the next few minutes, I'll reveal the 5 ways dealer greed is backfiring catastrophically, why manufacturers are now turning against their own dealers, and how these changes could save you thousands on your next vehicle purchase, if you understand what's really happening behind the scenes. The Millennial Revolt. The statistics tell one story, but the lived experiences of buyers paint a much darker picture of betrayal that's fueling a generational shift in car buying behavior. Millennials, who now represent about 1/3 of the consumer base, were hit hardest by dealership markups, and they're responding with unprecedented hostility toward the traditional dealer model. A staggering 43% of millennial car buyers paid more than sticker price on their last purchase, the highest proportion of any age group. Many of these young buyers already face strained budgets from student loans, housing costs, and inflation. Being squeezed for thousands above the advertised price didn't just hurt their finances, it permanently damaged their trust in the entire dealership system. I felt like a walking wallet, nothing more. One millennial buyer told me after paying $7,500 above MSRP for a mid-size SUV. The salesperson literally shrugged when I pointed out the markup. He said, "That's just what they're going for now," as if I had no choice but to accept it. Unlike previous generations who might grudgingly accept these practices as part of the game, millennials are responding by abandoning traditional dealerships entirely. They're turning to direct-to-consumer brands like Tesla and Rivian, exploring online purchase options, and even delaying vehicle purchases altogether rather than subjecting themselves to what they view as a fundamentally exploitative system. This generational shift isn't temporary, it's a permanent realignment of consumer behavior. Millennials who felt betrayed during their first major purchase won't simply get over it and return to traditional dealers when inventory normalizes. The trust is broken, and they're actively seeking alternatives that offer transparency, fixed pricing, and a buying experience that doesn't feel like psychological warfare. But millennials aren't the only ones rebelling. Even wealthy buyers who should have been immune to price pressure are walking away with a sense of betrayal that's reshaping luxury car sales nationwide. Nearly half of households earning more than $150,000 reported paying above MSRP during the shortage. These buyers should have been prime long-term customers, trading in frequently and investing in premium service plans. Instead, they left dealerships with a sour taste, many choosing to delay their next purchase or switch brands entirely. For them, the insult wasn't simply financial, but symbolic. If loyalty and spending power didn't protect them from exploitation, then no customer was safe. The betrayal hit particularly hard for luxury brand buyers who expected white-glove treatment and instead received the same gouging as everyone else. This collective sense of betrayal has reached Washington, where regulators can no longer ignore the groundswell of consumer outrage demanding protection from predatory dealer practices. Second curiosity loop. The regulatory hammer. When deception becomes a business model, regulators eventually arrive with sharpened tools. After years of consumer complaints, the Federal Trade Commission announced its Combating Auto Retail Scams Rule, CARS rule, to tackle hidden fees and deceptive sales tactics head-on. And the penalties have dealerships trembling. The new rule carries real force. Each violation could cost more than $50,000, an amount large enough to erase the profit from several vehicle sales in a single stroke. For dealers accustomed to exploiting market shortages, the threat of multi-million-dollar penalties has turned a once profitable scheme into a potential liability that could bankrupt smaller operations overnight. Consumer advocates celebrated the move. Families who had felt powerless against dealer tactics are suddenly backed by the weight of federal enforcement. Lawmakers highlighted stories of drivers blindsided by surprise add-ons and vowed to restore fairness to the showroom. Automakers, though technically powerless over dealer pricing, quietly supported the crackdown. Every unfair markup reflected poorly on the brands themselves, undoing years of marketing investment and damaging reputations they couldn't afford to lose. For dealerships, the message is clear. The era of unchecked greed is closing, replaced by the risk of fines and lawsuits. What once seemed like clever opportunism is now a red flag, drawing the attention of regulators, journalists, and angry buyers alike. The FTC's action represents more than just new rules. It's a fundamental shift in power dynamics. Dealerships that once operated with minimal oversight now face scrutiny of their entire business model. From advertising to financing to service recommendations, every aspect of dealer operations is now subject to regulatory review with teeth. But while new car transactions face tighter oversight, an even more damaging scandal has emerged in the used car market, one that reveals just how deeply dealer greed has infected every corner of the automotive retail landscape. Third curiosity loop. The used car fee ambush. The used car market was supposed to be the safe refuge for ordinary families priced out of new vehicles. Instead, it became another minefield of deception and hidden fees that's creating a second wave of consumer rebellion. A recent industry report revealed that 71% of used car buyers encountered unexpected charges averaging $640 per purchase. For many working families, that extra bill represented rent money, groceries, or a month of childcare. The betrayal cut far deeper than the glossy brochures ever admitted. The fees came in many forms. Some customers were blindsided by documentation charges that mysteriously appeared after the handshake. Others were pressured into overpriced service contracts or mandatory accessories that added hundreds to the final bill. The ambush was rarely disclosed up front. It arrived only after buyers had mentally committed to the purchase. By then exhausted and eager to drive away, many felt trapped into paying. The backlash has been swift and merciless. Social media channels are now filled with angry posts exposing the tactics of specific dealerships. TikTok and YouTube videos detailing hidden fees have gone viral, transforming individual frustrations into a collective outcry that's reshaping buying behavior. One Florida dealership discovered this the hard way after adding a mandatory $1,995 protection package to every used vehicle on their lot. A customer recorded the sales manager insisting the fee couldn't be removed, then posted the interaction online. Within days, the video had over 2 million views. The dealership's online ratings plummeted, and local news picked up the story. The ensuing PR disaster cost them far more in lost sales than they ever made from the add-on. This wave of digital shaming has turned once private sales tactics into public spectacles. Casual shoppers who once assumed buying used meant safety are now approaching every dealer with suspicion, researching specific locations for complaints, and walking away at the first sign of hidden fees. But the most devastating consequence of this eroded trust isn't happening on the sales floor. It's playing out in service departments across the country, where the true financial lifeblood of dealerships is now under threat. Fourth curiosity loop: the service lane exodus. Once the crown jewel of dealership profit, the service department is now bleeding customers to independent shops at a rate that threatens the entire dealer business model. For years, dealerships relied on the repair bay as their most consistent source of income. While new car sales fluctuated with supply and demand, service work promised steady margins through oil changes, scheduled maintenance, and warranty repairs. That safety net, however, is rapidly unraveling. Recent industry surveys reveal a sharp decline in service loyalty. Only 30% of customers now say they prefer dealerships for service, down from 35% just a few years earlier. Independent shops and chains like Firestone and Jiffy Lube are gaining ground rapidly, with many reporting double-digit growth from former dealer customers. For many drivers, the shift isn't just about price, but about trust. After being overcharged on the sales floor, consumers naturally assume the same tactics extend to the service department. When a dealer suggests a brake pad replacement at twice the expected cost, customers no longer view it as expertise, they suspect greed. The emotional impact runs deep. People feel doubly betrayed when the place that sold them an overpriced car also pressures them for unnecessary repairs. A West Virginia Toyota owner described skipping the dealership entirely after being charged $680 for routine maintenance that an independent mechanic completed for $295. After they marked up my car by $5,000 over sticker, I just couldn't trust them with service, he explained. If they're willing to gouge me on the purchase, why would they be honest about repairs? Multiply that experience across thousands of households, and the financial damage becomes clear. Service departments typically generate 30 to 45% of dealer profits, but require only 15 to 20% of the overhead. That high-margin revenue was supposed to sustain dealers through sales downturns. Now even that anchor is slipping away. The exodus from service bays creates a downward spiral. As fewer customers return for maintenance, dealers become even more dependent on extracting maximum profit from each sale, which further alienates buyers and accelerates service defection. It's a cycle that established dealers are struggling to break. As service customers defect by the thousands, automakers themselves are beginning to question the value of the traditional dealer model, creating unprecedented tension between manufacturers and the retailers who have exclusively sold their products for decades. Fifth curiosity loop: automakers versus dealers. When GM and Ford publicly scolded their own dealers for excessive markups, it signaled a fracture in the century-old partnership that has defined how Americans buy cars. The franchise model that kept automakers and retailers bound together is now unraveling from both ends. For decades, manufacturers provided the product and marketing muscle while dealers handled sales and service. Each side needed the other. But the over-MSRP era shattered that balance by revealing a fundamental conflict of interest. Dealers maximize short-term profit per unit while automakers need to build long-term brand loyalty. The breaking point came when customer research showed that people weren't just blaming individual dealers for gouging, they were rejecting entire brands. Executives from General Motors and Ford issued unprecedented public warnings to their dealer networks, stating that excessive markups were damaging brand reputation beyond repair. Some even threatened to withhold allocation of popular models from the worst offenders. "We cannot tolerate dealers who damage the brand for everyone else," one Ford executive told a dealer council meeting. "When customers walk away feeling cheated, they don't just leave that dealership, they leave Ford entirely." This public chastisement revealed deeper tensions that had been building for years. Automakers inspired by Tesla's success with direct sales are actively exploring ways to reduce or eliminate their dependence on the traditional dealer network. Meanwhile, dealers argue that without them, rural markets would be left underserved and local economies would suffer. The conflict extends beyond pricing disputes to the fundamental question of who should control the customer relationship in the digital age. Manufacturers want direct access to buyers through online sales platforms and subscription services. Dealers see these initiatives as existential threats to their business model. For customers watching from the outside, this feud confirms what many already suspected. The current system isn't working for anyone. Not manufacturers, not consumers, and increasingly, not even the dealers themselves. As this conflict between automakers and dealers intensifies, an entirely new threat is emerging from outside the traditional automotive ecosystem, one that could render the entire debate irrelevant. Sixth curiosity loop, the direct sales breakthrough. Why haggle with a middleman when you can click and buy direct? That's the question transforming how Americans purchase vehicles, and the answer is reshaping the entire industry. For decades, car buying has been defined by the dealership model, a system protected by state franchise laws that required manufacturers to sell through independent retailers. But consumer frustration is accelerating the rise of alternatives that bypass dealers entirely. Tesla proved it was possible to sell directly to buyers through company-owned stores and online platforms, successfully challenging franchise laws in multiple states. Customers accustomed to purchasing nearly everything else online quickly embraced the idea of shopping for cars the same way. A few clicks, a clear price, and no hidden fees. This model feels refreshingly straightforward after years of opaque negotiations and dealer add-ons. Rivian, Lucid, and other EV startups have followed Tesla's lead, while even traditional manufacturers like Volvo and BMW are experimenting with online sales platforms that minimize dealer involvement. The shift extends beyond electric vehicles. Online platforms like Carvana, Vroom, and CarMax's online division intensify the disruption, letting shoppers compare prices, arrange financing, and trade in their current vehicles without ever visiting a dealership. Burned by markup experiences, buyers embrace the transparency of systems where the listed price is the final price. "I'll never set foot in a traditional dealership again," explained one recent Rivian buyer. "I ordered online, the price was exactly what was advertised, and the delivery specialist didn't try to sell me anything extra. It felt like buying from a normal company instead of entering a psychological battle." The numbers reflect this sentiment. Direct-to-consumer auto sales have grown by over 210% since 2020, far outpacing the traditional dealer segment. In states where franchise laws have been reformed or challenged, direct sales now account for up to 18% of new vehicle transactions, a figure that would have seemed impossible just 5 years ago. This digital transformation isn't just about convenience, it's about trust. Consumers are reclaiming control by demanding clarity and refusing to tolerate the hidden costs and pressure tactics that define dealer-based car buying for generations. Each transaction completed outside the dealership system chips away at the dominance dealers once held. And as international competitors enter the market with their own direct sales models, the pressure on traditional dealers is intensifying from all sides. Seventh curiosity loop: global rivals move in. As U.S. dealers stumble, international automakers smell opportunity, and they're moving aggressively to fill the trust gap left by domestic franchises. Chinese manufacturers like BYD, NIO, and Xpeng are preparing major entries into the American market with transparent pricing models and direct-to-consumer approaches designed to appeal to buyers disillusioned with traditional dealers. European brands are accelerating their own direct sales initiatives, with Volkswagen, Mercedes, and Volvo all launching online platforms that minimize dealer involvement. These international competitors are building their American strategy around the very weakness that's plaguing domestic dealers: lack of transparency and eroded trust. Their marketing emphasizes fixed pricing, no hidden fees, and simplified buying experiences, directly addressing the pain points that have driven consumers away from traditional showrooms. For American families, the appeal isn't just about horsepower or features anymore. It's about respect for their time and wallet. Promises of no surprise fees and what you see is what you pay resonate deeply with buyers who feel burned by domestic dealer practices. One Chinese brand preparing to launch in the U.S. market has built its entire marketing campaign around the tagline, "No games." No gouging, just cars. The message is clear. We understand what you've been through with traditional dealers, and we're offering something different. This global encroachment carries long-term consequences for the domestic auto industry. Market share that once seemed locked in for American giants is now vulnerable to erosion from competitors who recognize the opportunity created by dealer greed. The same forces that transformed consumer electronics, where Asian brands captured dominance through price and reliability, could reshape the automotive landscape if domestic dealers continue to alienate customers. As international rivals gain ground, the pressure is mounting within dealerships themselves, where employees are increasingly uncomfortable defending practices they know are driving customers away. Eighth curiosity loop: labor demands reform. For workers, dealer greed wasn't just a customer betrayal, it was a workplace betrayal that's sparking internal rebellion at dealerships nationwide. Service technicians, salespeople, and support staff have endured years of pressure to push unnecessary add-ons and justify inflated markups. As public anger mounted, many realized that their personal reputations were being destroyed by policies they didn't control and often didn't support. The backlash has provided momentum for organized labor to step in, offering dealership employees a path toward dignity, stability, and fairer practices. Unionization efforts now target dealership workers who were long seen as too fragmented to organize effectively. Mechanics resent flat-rate systems that reward speed over quality, while sales staff reject commission schemes that incentivize deception. With customers leaving and trust collapsing, employees are demanding change, not just for better working conditions, but for a fairer, more sustainable business model. "I'm tired of having to lie to people," one service advisor at a major dealer group told me. "Management pushes us to recommend fluid flushes and services that customers don't need yet. I got into this business to help people maintain their cars, not to squeeze extra money from them." Labor leaders frame this moment as a chance to reset the relationship between workers and management. Instead of being forced to participate in practices that alienate buyers, employees want a role in building a new model based on transparency and fairness. Their demands resonate with the public, which increasingly views dealership staff less as villains and more as fellow victims of an exploitative system. If unions succeed in organizing dealership workers, the pressure for reform will come not just from external forces like regulators and consumers, but from within the dealerships themselves. This internal push for change comes as courts across the country are forcing dealers to pay a steep financial price for years of deceptive practices. Ninth curiosity loop: the courtroom reckoning. For years, customers felt cheated. Now judges are forcing dealers to pay the bill, and the numbers are staggering. Across the country, lawsuits have piled up against against dealerships accused of deceptive pricing, hidden fees, and forced add-ons. In one high-profile case, an Illinois settlement created a compensation fund worth more than $20 million to reimburse customers who had been tricked into paying for add-on products they never requested or that provided minimal value. Similar cases in other states have forced dealerships to return hundreds of thousands of dollars in ill-gotten gains, proving that the legal system is no longer content to look the other way when dealers engage in deceptive practices. These court victories mean more than refunds. They acknowledge that buyers were systematically exploited. Families once left powerless at the negotiating table are now finding justice through the courts, correcting the power imbalance that defined car buying for decades. The legal environment has become so hostile to traditional dealer tactics that attorneys are now actively targeting dealerships with class action lawsuits focused on specific practices like mandatory protection packages, undisclosed documentation fees, and bait-and-switch advertising. Looming multi-million-dollar settlements threaten to erase all the profits dealers earned through deceptive practices during the shortage, while fueling even more litigation as successful cases establish precedents for future claims. The message from the courts is clear. If dealers continue to deceive, judges will strip away their ill-gotten gains and return the money to consumers. This legal accountability is reshaping the industry in ways regulatory fines never could, forcing dealers to reconsider practices that expose them to potentially ruinous liability. As these courtroom defeats mount, financial markets are taking notice and withdrawing support from businesses built on increasingly risky practices. Final revelation: the market transformation. Buying a car used to be simple. Now it's a vote for the system you believe in, and dealers are discovering that consumers are voting against them with their wallets. Every trip to a showroom or online marketplace carries meaning beyond the transaction itself. Consumers are weighing not just horsepower, range, or safety ratings, but also trust, fairness, and corporate accountability. The decision to purchase from a traditional dealer versus a direct sales model, or to patronize a dealership service department versus an independent shop, has become a referendum on what kind of automotive market consumers want to support. The transformation is happening faster than anyone predicted. Direct-to-consumer sales are growing exponentially. International competitors are rushing in with transparent pricing models. Courts are issuing multi-million-dollar judgments against deceptive practices. Regulators are implementing rules with teeth. Automakers are reconsidering their relationships with dealers who damage brand reputation. For dealers who refuse to adapt, the future looks increasingly bleak. Those who built their business models around hidden fees, pressure tactics, and exploitative service recommendations face extinction as consumers abandon them for alternatives that offer respect and transparency. But for consumers, this transformation represents a historic opportunity to reshape an industry that has resisted change for decades. The collapse of dealer trust has created openings for new models, new competitors, and new experiences that put buyers first rather than treating them as walking wallets to be squeezed for maximum profit. When you buy your next car, you're making a choice about what kind of market you want to support. That choice will echo far beyond a single purchase, shaping industries, influencing politics, and redefining what fairness looks like in one of the most expensive and emotional transactions of modern life. The dealer greed that dominated the pandemic era is finally backfiring, not just through lost sales or damaged reputations, but through a fundamental reshaping of how Americans buy and service their vehicles. The transformation won't happen overnight, but the direction is clear. The future belongs to those who rebuild trust, not those who exploited it. Hit subscribe to follow this evolving story and learn exactly how to leverage these changes to save thousands on your next vehicle purchase.